a pretty cool story how that actually came about, isn't it? Writing a letter.
Again, it's just one of the, I don't really have a plan in my life, and my focus is always on music, but all the adventures that happen to me, they're never really planned out. I don't like to know what's going to happen the day.
The best ones when you don't know.
And so honestly, I was sitting in a bar in Hollywood, and Pete Thomas walked in, the drummer from The Attractions, and Nick from Transvision, and we were on an American tour, and he and I had already decided that in a week's time, we'd just done a whole residency in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, and we were going to go off and do San Diego and San Francisco to finish the US tour, and Nick and I decided we were going to split the band up. I can't remember if it was San Diego or San Francisco, but it was San something that we split up in, and it was a really good gig. But anyway, so only Nick and I knew. We'd told the band and we'd told the manager, but it wasn't for public knowledge. And Pete came in, and and that's what had happened. Earlier that summer we'd headlined a festival in Ireland called Fela. We'd headlined one night and Elvis had headlined the other, but we stayed for the whole weekend, and so I'd watched Elvis do his thing. And at that time, Elvis seemed to me to represent somebody whose songs really meant so much. And just as a knee-jerk reaction, when I met Pete in the bar, I just said, hey, listen, don't tell anyone, but we're going to split up in a week's time. Do you think Elvis would do something with me? And Pete literally said, why don't you write him a letter? So that night on Sunset Marquee notepaper, which I'm sure Elvis must still have, because I still have the demo tape he sent back to me. Actually, I don't have it, my old boyfriend has it, but I wrote a letter to Elvis saying, da-da-da-da, it's basically the same story. I'm about to leave Transvision Vamp, not sure I've got the legs yet to be my own songwriter. Do you want to help me out? And I didn't hear anything, and then 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, I was back in London by then, a cassette arrived in the mail, and it was a whole album that Elvis and his then girlfriend, Cot Riordan, the bass player from the Pogues, they had written. And it was very uncompromising. It was like, you want to do this album? Here's the album. And I didn't really stop to think about it. I was like, fuck, it's a whole album written for me by Elvis Costello. Of course I want to do it. And so that turned into a flurry of activity with record labels and who's going to be the A&R person and, all the machinations that go on behind the scenes. But I ended up in a studio in the south of France with Bob Dylan's band, some of Bob Dylan's band and some of Van Morrison's band as my backing band, Pete Thomas on drums as kind of Elvis's envoy, and and Chris Kimsey, the producer of the Rolling Stones, or some of the Rolling Stones albums.
Amazing.
Behind the desk, and we made this album. But it was interesting, it was on a purely musical level. It was wonderful in as much that I was playing with incredible players and fabulous studio, blah blah blah. It was like one of those real big budget albums that you rarely hear of nowadays, where just thousands and thousands are just being spent every single day, and and the budget, the budget's there for you. No one's questioning it, because they just presumed that Wendy James with My Success and Elvis Costello with his would turn into a multi-million selling album, which was not the case. And I clearly understand that the reason for that is, I really understand now, with music the vibe has to be right, and you can hear it come off really great records. You can hear that the musician's passion and love and energy and integrity is all on tape. Beyond the quality of the songwriting, you can hear when the vibe is right, and the vibe just wasn't right on the Elvis Costello record. Everything was there that you would think you would need: great players, good producer, nice studio, unlimited time. You would think that it would turn out incredible, but it just didn't have that spark of love about it. And so consequently the record sounds well produced, it sounds like it's well played, it sounds like it's well sung. But there's no real, for me, to my ears, I don't have a copy of it. I don't have a copy of any of the Transvision stuff either. I don't even have a copy of Racine 1.
What's going on with you? What have you got a copy of?
I do have a copy of Racine 2.
Right.
I keep my life very light, but my load anyway. I keep my load very light, but so the Elvis thing came out, and one single in, I just pulled the plugs on the whole thing because I was scheduled to go off on a world tour and promote the whole thing.
Yep.
And I just thought, I can't spend a year of my life singing Elvis's songs. They're not true to me. I don't love them. It doesn't feel right. So I just cancelled the whole thing, and you know, really at that point started the next stage of my life.
And was that coming here?
No, I didn't come here for another few years. What I did was I stayed in West London, and I built a little studio in my house, and I picked up my guitar and I learned how to play. And then not only did I learn how to play, but I learned how to engineer for myself, at least on an 8-track, and took quite a few years, 3 or 4 years of, because you can't just go from not being a player into being a player and also having a bunch of songs that are fit enough to turn into a record. And that, you know, that takes time. Most bands that even if they get famous at 19, they've been playing guitar since they were 14. You know, you have to put the work in. It's a craft, it's a talent. It's not something you don't just go from nothing. You don't go from nothing into releasing a record within 6 months. Or at least I didn't. And so I just spent the time getting to hear my own voice, you know, reading, watching movies, listening to music, just for the first time really discovering, because of course my taste isn't the same as Nick Sayer from Transvision Vamps. I had to find my own thing out, and that took 3 or 4 years. And then when I did have the demo for Racine 1, it was at that point that I moved to New York, because I felt I had the music in my pocket, and when you got that in your pocket, then you know you've got a future. You know, the only time you're in limbo when you're a musician or a songwriter is when you don't have the songs. When you got the songs, you can basically make a future for yourself. Okay. So I got the songs and I moved to New York, just around the corner from here.
And what was it like when you first got here? Because this is just like the most dynamic place in the world, isn't it?
Well, I fell in love with New York. I mean, I came here when I was 15 and a half years old. Really early on, for Transvision Vamp, I was marched into the chairman of Sony's office here in New York City, you know, with the I want to be famous thing. And so very early on I'd been to New York many times obviously Transvision had played here a lot, and I'd come and lived here on and off for a few months at a time. And I always felt, I mean, I guess some people just fall in love with New York City and other people just pass through. And I'm one of the people that the minute I saw the skyline, I just knew, how can I live anywhere else? This is the center of the universe. It is. And now I just can't imagine being in a city that isn't so multicultural and so extreme, but at the same time so liberal. New York is liberal in as much that it allows you to be from anywhere, and you've got this, and I really believe in the ideals of America, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Statue of Liberty saying, bring me your poor, your sick. I really believe fundamentally in the Republic of America, as opposed to coming from England, which is a monarchy and everything is hereditary. It's not the case in America as we sit here today, but the fundamental ideals of America is anyone can come here and anyone can achieve anything they want, and that's such a pure, and everyone's equal, and that's such a pure basis for founding a country on. I mean, you go over the fact that they just slaughtered all the Native Americans to write that Bill of Rights, but you know, I believe in America. And so I felt, and New York specifically, it just gives me, I just love it. I mean, I really would wear one of those I Love New York t-shirts. Yeah. Whereas I can't imagine wearing an I Love London one. Right. Although my roots are inherently English, you know, I'm born and bred London, so I don't know, but some people, I've got a few girlfriends that live here in New York, from England, from London, and I guess it's like I said earlier, you either just fall in love with the city or you pass through, and I love it.